Today's video is a rare one, and if you've been around for a while, you've probably noticed that I don't really brew filter coffee all that often. And it's not really because I don't like it, but I feel like it is just a lot of fuss. There's a lot of faffing about, especially if you want it to be good. You've got scales and drippers and filters and kettles, and in the end, you have a cup of coffee in roughly the same amount of time it takes you to drink it. And with that admittedly hyperbolic scenario in mind, the thought or idea of having a premium home coffee brewer that can do most of those things with just the press of a button or two does appeal to me. And if you're watching this video, likely it appeals to you too. But instead of doing a standard singular focused review, I'll be taking a look at two of the most current and popular premium brewers, the Fellow Aiden and the Ratio 6, which also land in a very similar price point, but are two very different beasts, designed for two very different kinds of coffee people. Of course, before we get started though, I should disclose that Fellow did gift me the Aiden late last year, and I did already do a full review of it, so if you want to see that, I'll link it in the description and up here above me somewhere. Because, of course, I likely won't cover or rehash every single point I made in that video. When it comes to the Ratio 6, the folks at Ratio offered to send me a loaner for 6 months, so I've had it here in my kitchen since the end of last year, and I've been putting it through its paces. So with all that out of the way, we're going to dive right into it after a quick word from this video's sponsor. When it comes to making the best coffee, quality ingredients matter, and purely by the numbers, water makes up to 98% of what's in your cup, and it's absolutely vital to the long-term reliability of your equipment. So after months of testing and trials, I've landed on Third Wave Water for all of my coffee preparation. Third Wave Water offers a wide variety of mineral blends, specifically designed to get the most out of your favorite roast level or brew type. So take control of arguably one of the most important variables for brewing quality coffee today, and head over to thirdwavewater.com/Sprometheus or use code Sprometheus at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase. Thanks to Third Wave Water for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into it. When I said back in the intro that these two coffee brewers are very different beasts, I think we can all absolutely see that, even just on their face. The Ratio 6 sort of takes the classic home coffee brewer format and upgrades it with a more modern, sleeker overall look. Its modular carafe and dripper is also a nice way to keep things looking and feeling very cohesive in terms of its clean lines. And it also has a relatively compact footprint, which sits at 13.5 inches deep, 14.25 tall, and 6.75 wide, and weighs in at a surprisingly light 8 pounds. And I say surprising based on the listed materials on Ratio's website, which says the 6 is made out of precision stamped stainless steel and borosilicate glass water lines. From what I can tell, the only plastic that comes into contact with water throughout the brewing process is the water tank itself, that's made of Triton, which is BPA free, and only comes into contact with room temperature water. And the other is the brew basket, which holds the filter and of course your coffee. Overall, I would say the Ratio 6 definitely has a more higher end look. Its metal body panels, cap, and shower head really do give it a more robust feel that seems to really be intended to go the distance. There's no rattles, squeaks, or areas that feel like possible failure points after weeks, months, or years of use. And really, I think my only main criticism of the overall design of the brewer itself is lack of access to the water tank. Personally, I would like to be able to clean that out with soap and water periodically, but it doesn't really give you that level of access. So essentially, you're going to have to put in some kind of brewer-safe solution to periodically run through and clean everything out safely. The Aiden, on the other hand, is pretty nondescript and non-traditional when it comes to your average coffee brewer design language. It's essentially a large box. There's also a large removable water tank that holds up to 1.5 liters, which is fed into the closed chamber which holds the basket filter and your coffee. And of course, predictably, this leads to the carafe below. On the counter, its footprint does feel fairly substantial considering its boxy stature. It sits at 9 inches wide, 9 inches deep, and 12 inches tall. And on the scale, it still clocks in at a pretty light 9 pounds, which, if you're doing the math, is 1 pound heavier than the Ratio. But don't let that 1 pound fool you. From an external perspective anyway, all of the materials you'll find from top to bottom are plastic. From the body panels to the water tank, which is listed as BPA free, to the baskets and the brew head itself. The only clearly metal portion is the carafe. But speaking of carafes and build, between these two, even when brewed at the same temperature, ratio, and coffee, there is still a winner in terms of keeping things warmer longer, though the inner spout lip on Ratio's carafe still has me wondering why. But the design and build between these two isn't the only thing that sets them apart, so let's now move on to the one thing they're both designed to do: brew coffee. I think having a brewer that looks good and meets our expectations in terms of materials and build is one thing, but having it produce a good cup of coffee is something else entirely. But a good cup of coffee is personal, it's preferential, so I'm going to try and break down this section in general, measurable terms, like temperature and extraction percentages and basic flavor descriptions. That said, let's talk usability first. And the Ratio 6 is about as straightforward as they come. Fill it with your desired amount of water, place a filter, some ground coffee, and press the single button on the machine. From there, it just does its thing and displays the current state of coffee, whether it be bloom, brew, or ready. And the Aiden, on the other hand, can be almost as equally as simple. Make sure you've got water in the tank, a filter, and coffee in the dripper, and select the instant brew from the heads-up display. And depending on your chosen brewing programming, you'll see the remaining time and in some cases more detailed information on the screen, and of course a little chime when it's finished. So when it comes to brewing, both of these can be ran with a single press, but when it comes to the Ratio, that's where it starts and ends. There isn't any control beyond how much water you put in the machine, because that's how much water it will brew in that cycle. The Aiden, on the other hand, has a much wider array of options for those who want them. From brew temperature, even in specific brew phases, durations, ratios, and also profiles based on roast levels or even specific coffees. That said though, the menus are a little bit difficult to navigate with just a single dial that also seconds as a button. You'll find yourself doing a lot of scrolling and tapping. Now, I think this is where this comparison begins to deviate, based solely on the end user's expectations. On a basic level, a standard 200 degree 1-16 brew on the same coffee between these two brewers, I found the differences from cup flavor to extraction percentage negligible, at least when both use a flat bottom brew basket, which I should say at this point, the Aiden is also swappable to a cone, which does tend to produce slightly cleaner cup when compared side by side. But on the flat bottom basket, you'd be hard pressed to pinpoint much of a taste difference, at least on a medium roast coffee. But when you start to move away from certain roasts or dig into the variables that are available on the Aiden, you really can open up more of a coffee's potential. And I mentioned roast levels specifically for those who want to brew darker roasts. I found the Ratio great on medium, good on light, and so-so on dark. And that's because on the Ratio, because it has a set brew temperature which can't really be changed, and based on my measurements, granted though basic, it does brew at or above 200 degrees between 200 and 203, 204, and so that hot water hitting a darker roast means it's going to be more soluble, it's going to break down faster, and more of those solubles will make it in the cup, meaning it's easier to over extract. So long story short, you can get much more bitter, astringent cups on dark roasts from the Ratio than you could on the Aiden when you drop the temperature down to, let's say, 185, 190. And light roasts kind of land in a similar predicament because you aren't able to adjust hotter and you aren't able to really get those nuanced flavors out of them with the level of control you get on the Aiden versus the lack of control on the Ratio. Though, like I mentioned, I think light roasts are still good on the Ratio, but they could be better given a bit more control. In the end, these two brewers obviously both make good coffee. I can't really say that one is better than the other. They both meet the pretty exacting benchmark standards set forth by the Specialty Coffee Association for temperature stability, consistency, and brew time. And I think beyond just a few bells and whistles or build materials and things like that, there really only is one thing that sets them apart, and that is who they're marketed to. The Fellow Aiden is clearly for the tinkerer, the adventurous brewer, someone who wants to dig in and make a second home in the rabbit hole that coffee brewing can be, but also wants the ease of a single press on an off day. The ratio 6, on the other hand, is for the consistent and comfortable brewer, someone who wants their morning coffee ritual to be more routine than research. Drinking a good cup of coffee is part of it, but not the whole focus point. So I guess when it comes to choosing between these two brewers, it does require a bit of self-reflection and asking yourself, which camp do I fall into? But on that note, I think it's time I start wrapping this one up, and as always, pass the conversation on to you. So what are your thoughts on the Fellow Aiden versus the ratio 6? Which would you prefer, or do you prefer, and why? Drop your answers to those questions and any others you may have in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications when new videos drop. Check out my Instagram at Sprometheus for more coffee content. Help support the channel by considering becoming a member for unique exclusive perks. And as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.